welcome to our session, Labor Markets for the Next Generation. So very quickly, globally, about 25% of youth are not employed, attending schools or undergoing skills training, with significantly higher rates in emerging economies and among women. What employment opportunities lie ahead for them, and how can government and the private sector design social policies and labor markets to unlock their potential is what we will be discussing today. And allow me to begin by introducing our amazing panel. We start with His Excellency Erlangga Hartarto, Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs of Indonesia, in addition to Dr. Badr Al-Badr, Chief Executive Officer from Hamad bin Salman Foundation, MISC, and also Jay Collins, the Vice Chairman of Global Public Sector at Citi, and Iman Shakur, Global Shaper from Riyadh Hub, Saudi Arabia. Welcome, everyone. We'll start by you, Dr. Badr, initially, because that's what everyone thought we should begin with when we were inside. And how can business leaders support youth employment? Let's start with that.
Let's first of all establish that the world is changing, the job market is changing, and the challenges are very great. If you look at the demographics of emerging countries such as Saudi Arabia, part of the Middle East, where unemployment is rampant, it's about 16% in the Middle East, less in the Gulf region, about 10%. In Saudi Arabia, latest statistic was about 8%. This is today. But we are seeing more and more young people come into the job markets. And the rate of people coming into the job market needs to be matched by the rate of job creations. Okay. What needs to happen is a balance of creating new jobs for the new entrants, but at the same time, with the changing environment, it's not only happening from the point of view of finding jobs for the new people as well, but there's also unemployment happening from the changing nature of jobs, from technological disruptions, the AI disruption that's coming along, from socioeconomic impact. So for that reason, job creation, reskilling is really important. What we focus on at the MISC Foundation is gearing up the economic impact focused on youth through 4 different levers: through the skilling, reskilling, through creating jobs in these new technological opportunities, through entrepreneurship, through the leadership, making sure that new leadership understands the technological impacts of what's happening, and finally making also the nonprofit and the social fabric of the society absorb and embrace this here through not only creating jobs, but also supporting the business in the reskilling. Working together is the only way where we could address the challenges that are coming towards us.
Your Excellency, looking at Indonesia, just like Saudi, a large youth population, there's the need for reskilling, for opportunities, for creating new jobs. What are the biggest issues the government faces today when addressing youth employment?
Thank you, Maya. I think Indonesia is a large archipelago. If you want to project Indonesia in Europe, it's just from Ireland to Kazakhstan. So that's the whole area with 280 million people. And every year, it's born 5 million babies.
In Indonesia?
In Indonesia.
So you need to create jobs for those.
So it means that every year minimum we have to provide 5 million jobs, or 4.5 to 5 million jobs. So that's the challenge. The challenge is the same, that we need to create a new employment. And a new employment is only happening when we have economic growth. So Indonesia economic growth, thanks God, is 5%. And we have managed to manage inflation at 2.5 million. So we can provide about 4 million new jobs every year. And the challenge of digitalization is very important. And Indonesia is using digitalization as a new engine of growth. So we use digitalization through the ASEAN, not only Indonesia, So during Indonesia leadership in ASEAN Summit and ASEAN meeting, we launched what we call Digital Economic Framework Agreement within an ASEAN. So the domestic market for digitalization in 2025 is almost 200 million US dollars. But in ASEAN in 2030 will be 1 trillion economic based on the digital.
Okay.
And with economic framework is triple to become 3 trillion. And for Indonesia, it's 600 billion.
Oh, wow.
So it's a big jobs that we need to provide for today's digital environment, the data securities, and we tailored the training for Apple academics or IBM hybrid cloud academics.
Okay.
And even we are working with MasterCard to provide the digital security. So that's blended with our education system, what we call freedom program, in which people from any university can get such training and the university can give credit for that, then integrate to the whole academic.
Okay.
Either you are in the economic or engineering or whatever. But if you have a digital component on that,
Okay.
so you can learn anywhere for that.
If you add, I think, Doctor, you had something you wanted to add?
No. I'm just very supportive of the digital skilling. That's something we do focus on in Saudi Arabia as well.
So, Jay, let's move on to you and discuss how to combine the public and or the government and the private sector when we are looking at creating jobs in the future. How can we provide for the 20% that are coming and there are no available jobs for them?
Great. Well, let me set the context a little bit for that, which is first the degree of disruption. And there are utopians and dystopians in the world that look at technology with the glass half full or empty. And on the positive side, you look at the jobs that are created for science and math, digital architecture, clean energy technologies, cyberspace, the linkages of everything that's now happening in the quantum space and what's coming. There's extraordinary jobs created by this opportunity. At the same time, with generative AI now, even what we thought was happening before will happen in terms of job destruction. You have to disaggregate it because the food processing segment or office admin, essentially jobs that can be automated easily with speed, will be crushed over a very fast period of time. And you think about that in terms of what you would think about it. The last time this happened in the Industrial Revolution, this dwarfs the Industrial Revolution in terms of the quantum, but most importantly, the speed. And so let me just...
To what extent do you think it dwarfs the Industrial Revolution?
Oh, I think by, McKinsey is saying 30 times more, but it's also the speed is what kills you. And that's where it really gets to the need for this public-private partnership, because you have to supercharge everything. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this space, there's active labor market programs, and there are passive labor market programs. And those are essentially as policy interventions into the disruption that happens to create jobs. And so in an active world, for example, think vocational training, the intervention of schools, of labor, particularly in the United States, and of companies into trying to figure out with policymakers what's called public employment services, re-engineering them to be able to deal with the scale of this disruption, mapping where it's happening and mapping, essentially crowding in everything from re-engineering education systems, to the retooling that has to happen within the private sector with some type of, let's say, Estonia-like enhancement where the government actually will put a voucher subsidy program in place for governments to ensure that that happens. And by the way, we were talking in the room earlier about how much we learned during COVID. It's fantastic to be able to look at what around the world, every government in the world tried to figure out what the tax issues and incentive structures were. Some of those crashed and burned fast, and some of those really worked. And so we have to take a lesson out of that playbook to see, but what we believe is fundamentally we're going to have to do this with the private sector. In fact, one of the things you look at in the MENA region, unfortunately, is a lot of these programs for the last 20 years, and many of you know better than I do at Citi, that the MENA region has had youth unemployment at double to close to triple global averages with these programs, a lot of which haven't worked. So we have to look at why that is, and one big part of it, and I won't go into this now, we can come back, is really looking at the other side of the coin, which is the Tunisia case, right? So I think the Tunisia case is a great case because Tunisia threw massive money at education. So much money at education that it created an unemployment rate of 63% for university graduates. Think about that for a minute. What that means is if I don't create the private sector demand, if I don't create that enabling environment of the private sector that is creating those jobs, big and very small SME, that I can do all of these public employment services measures I want, all of these labor market programs I want, but I've got to have private sector demand. So, stop there.
We have someone, a member from the next generation, from the youth, and we're going to ask her about her expectations and your expectations from the government. How do you think the government and the private sector would work together in ensuring more employment for the youth?
Well, that's a terrific question, Maya. And I'll start off by saying, many of you might already know, but I'll shed some light as a Saudi citizen. 2 out of 3 jobs today in Saudi Arabia are government jobs. So we have an unparalleled and unprecedented need, like my colleague Jay mentioned, towards privatization. So if we look at what are the building blocks of any economy, what are the building blocks towards job creation, very simply put, ladies and gentlemen, it's startups and the creation of new jobs and transforming our economy from a job-seeking economy. So when young people graduate today, they don't only think, where can I find a job? To, how can I create a job? How can I transform myself to a young person or an entrepreneur with a vision to a visionary? In fact, on average, early stage companies, which is my company, Blossom Accelerator, specializes in pre-seed and seed. Early stage companies, prior to pre-Series A, create anywhere between 5 to 7 new jobs. Now that might seem little, but by the time a company reaches Series A, we're looking at job creation within the thousands. So today, how can public and private sector work together? The private sector and public sector are already working together in Saudi Arabia, spearheading many innovation and entrepreneurship programs to both empower and enable entrepreneurs to help them start, scale, and succeed. We've run many of them with many different PIF companies, ministries, authorities, and this is critical because as we see towards privatization, we also not only need to create new companies for more economic growth, but also tackle the new sectors Saudi is focusing on, whether that be gaming, whether that be clean energy, whether that be tourism, arts and culture, biotech, the list can go on and on and on. But the first step is really to get young people today to really think about, especially in Saudi, 70% of our population is under 35. I'm very proud to be in that bracket, and I'm very proud to be part of the change and creating new jobs every day.
Dr. Badr, how do you attract people like Iman? What do you expect from those youth? What are you expecting from them?
Well, first of all, I would like to concur with Iman. We've worked in the past with Iman and definitely see so many talented Saudi like her within our ecosystems. We have set a target to ourselves to create 10,000 jobs through the startups that we support. And a few years after we set this goal, we had to revise it. Why? Because we already achieved it. This just concurs to what she's saying, that the power of startups to create jobs. And with the advances in technology, this will only turbocharge this momentum. So we're definitely way into, as a non-profit organization, the Mohammed bin Salman Foundation, focused solely on the empowerment of youth. We tackle it through the lens of entrepreneurships and startup, but we see also talented people in other sectors, such as the social sector. The social sector has opened up such a quite bit in Saudi Arabia after Vision 2030. So employment in the non-profit sector were boosted by about 5 times in the last 5 years. That's another area for job creation that also has a ripple effect on the economy. Not to underestimate the growth also in the private sector. As you said, the growth is tilted toward the public sector right now, but as more and more reliance is on the private sector, more jobs will be created there. And we are there to support at the MISC Foundation from the skilling point of view. Skilling and also matching youth to opportunities.
Jay, you had a comment?
Yes, I just want to build on what Iman said in terms of the importance of SMEs. And first is, I talked about an enabling environment. Small and medium-sized businesses can't handle heavy regulation. They can't handle heavy, slow, bureaucratic government processes. So you have to create an enabled environment from everything from regulation to tax to legal to licensing. Licensing is a huge challenge. That essentially allows for this creation. You look at what a lot of people talk about, American exceptionalism that's happening now in the economy. A big part of that is the speed of adaptation and agility of small and medium-sized businesses that can move flexibly, shut down, reopen, and pivot fast. So you have to be agile. The other thing that's fascinating, so many people say to me, well, what are you seeing in terms of generative AI crushing employment? I'm saying, well, actually, you look at the numbers in the United States right now, that city sees of small and medium-sized businesses, if they're not using AI, generative AI now, they're slow adopters. They can't compete with the employment growth of the generative AI adopters. Think about that. They're growing employment by multiples faster because they're using AI.
Okay.
It's not destroying their jobs. It's allowing them to be smarter and more efficient, sell more faster, and be leaner and meaner as they do it. It's a fantastic story. And again, that's segment specific because there are segments where that's different. But 70% of the job growth in the OECD is small and medium-sized businesses. So if you can't figure that out, you don't have a proposition to deal with the future of work.
Your Excellency, Imam mentioned that many of the graduating Saudis want jobs in the government.
Right.
When we look at the Indonesian model, and you're talking about digitization and teaching that and
Right.
preparing them, to what extent are we driving them towards SMEs? To what extent are we driving them towards the private sector?
I think in Indonesia, 90% of business are small and medium enterprise.
Okay.
And the government role of the total economic is only 20%. So 80% will be private sectors. And 90% is small and medium enterprises. What the government do is actually to make a reform, make it easier for mom and pop shop or small and medium enterprise to get license.
Okay.
And in order to get license with Indonesia Digitalisation, online single submission, they can apply from anywhere from their own tablet or even smartphone.
And how can you support that with the new AI coming? I mean,
Then-
mom and pop shop might
Yeah.
not be able to carry on for the
Yes.
next few years.
There are needs for wholesaler in the area.
Okay.
So that's for mom and pop shop. But the engine is digital engine. So we have small shops, for instance, for distribution of product. For instance, I'm not talking about something that is not good like smoking. In US,
Okay.
that smoking network is 200,000.
Okay.
In Indonesia, 250,000. And all digitally support. So whether it's a modern supermarket or mom and pop shop selling merchandise or fast-moving consumer product, they have similar leverage because they use the digital system
Okay.
for warehouse as well as they receive the payment system. And on top of that, Indonesia have a program to retraining and reskilling people exactly during the COVID, what we call a pre-job employment card, in which during the COVID, the 3 years, we have been teaching and training 17 million people, online and offline. And using the AI, the supply and demand is tailored to the needs of each individual. So each individual learn, and the government give subsidies for their courses, up to $70. They can choose 3 or 4 programs. There are 7 platform digital, and there are 40 of providing educations, and there are more than 700 courses available. Start from digitals or even making cafe as a bartender for small and medium enterprise. And we also have a job opening that is available in the digital network itself. So the supply and demand cater for individuals. And also we use it for the inclusiveness of the finance. So there are many of the people who participate in the program doesn't have a bank account before. So we introduce them to have e-wallet. So this is the first program that the payment is from Treasury direct to the e-wallet without any government agency.
Without any stops. There's
No,
just
no
one
stop.
that is seamless.
Just one. With face recognition, use your IDs and check whether you are working or you are in the university. So people can take the lesson online. And now we provide also offline. And then we give 4 months of subsidies, small amount, to give them be able to do a daily life while they are
And
studying.
to continue.
Yes, yes.
All right, Iman, talking about tailoring to the needs of people opens up also the topic of inclusivity and the importance of inclusivity. In the introduction, we spoke about the highest number of unemployed youth are women. So when we talk about gender equity and inclusivity and creating jobs, how do we address that?
Gosh, Maya, you're touching upon my favorite topic of all time.
I mean, we don't want to move in that direction completely, but
no.
I can.
I'll just say this. When I think of it, I think of diversity, meaning being invited to the party, but inclusivity is meaning to be asked to dance. And I think as world leaders, as government leaders, as leaders of our organizations, we must ascertain that the people that work with us are always being asked to dance, that they truly feel included in these environments. When I look at the gaps that exist today, whether it be for marginalized communities, women, maybe youth sometimes feeling brushed aside, I think of the following is that when we think of inclusion, we shouldn't just do it because it sounds good on paper. A lot of corporations make this mistake. They say, yes, inclusion, it sounds like a fantastic corporate social responsibility agenda. But instead, I invite everyone to think of inclusion as really the economic growth. Inclusion will really drive more economic returns, more job creation, and at the end of it also, more innovation. And more so, kind of also a call to action I really have to bring to the table, since I'm at the World Economic Forum, is most people, especially world leaders and heads of state and founders and CEOs, are not aware of it, but we all share something called the unconscious bias. I previously was a neuroscience researcher, so I can tell you firsthand, the frontal lobe, part of our brain, has adapted in such a way that we make quick assumptions about people when we meet them. And it is the case to protect ourselves, but within that process, sometimes we leave people behind. And since this is a room full of world-class leaders, I invite everyone to really challenge your unconscious bias, to hold other people in your organization, to hold yourself accountable and responsible so we can move past it. And when we talk about the labor market, and when we talk about job creation, when we talk about startups that are getting funded globally around the world, only 3% of venture capital funding goes towards women. And that's not because we don't have enough female founders. It's because of unconscious bias. So today I invite everyone to think more about that and think about how can we change things happening within our organization so we can transform the world to be one that's more inclusive.
She's getting a lot of, support, yeah. Jay, if we look at inclusivity and we want to look at the jobs that are being created in the market, in your opinion, what's working, what's not when it comes to creating new jobs?
First of all, I think that what is working are those companies that are disrupting their own labor practices. And that's not just about inclusivity, but it's about new business models. Okay. Business models that are re-engineering the employment and labor experience within the company the way AT&T is. The upskilling training within Unilever that allows current employees, imagine this, a lot of companies will know ahead of time that a particular segment of their business will be automated. And if they simply just plan that automation and throw that labor force out, fire them, it's extraordinarily inefficient for society, and it puts that burden back to the labor unions, it puts that burden back to the public sector. Instead of doing that, there are companies now that are anticipating that and retooling, upscaling, re-engineering the training mechanisms for those workers. And sometimes that retooling may mean that they still leave the company, but there is an investment process that has to happen there. So company partnership is working. A lot of labor models have to deal with, in this post-COVID world in particularly, the gig economy, part-time business models, flex models.
But you know, when we talk about the gig economy, some companies don't allow you to have other jobs if you're an employee. So how would you cater to the gig economy?
Well, again, part of this is in a flex economy where you realize that a certain part of your workforce is going to have to move by job segment, by type of function, or by location, and a lot of this is happening geographically. These flexible employment models have to change, and it's not just work at home, okay. But it's how do we better employ workers that are what they call short-term work models, right? And allow them to come in and come out, as well as to address some of the, let's call it the safety net mechanisms around that part of the economy that is not there either for the informal, for the immigration, or for gig-type self-employed workers. So we've absolutely have to address that. And then if I may just say one other thing, which is, Iman mentioned, any economy that is trying to figure out how to grow the small and medium-sized businesses has to address financing. They have to address the capital challenge of how those businesses are funded. And there are working models out there, microfinance models, venture capital models, that exist in some economies and then just literally don't exist in others. I think I've been shocked. I've been to Europe 4 times this year, at the discussion of the lack of flexible venture and private equity capital and private credit capital that can just go to the right layer of capital, risk capital that is needed. And I think that's even more so true here in the MENA region. And if we don't develop that, then you don't have a funding source for dynamic, creative businesses that can create jobs in the future.
We have, do we have questions in the audience? I mean, we only have 10 minutes left, so I think we should take some questions. Yeah, we have a question here, please.
My name is Daraje Wadova. I'm the president of SOS Children Village International. Okay. And talking about global collaboration and growth, what comes to my mind is young people unemployed in developing world. And Iman spoke my mind, both in terms of transforming these young people from job seekers to job creators and the gender dimension. And I don't want to really go in there. But from the work we do, a lot of young people who are from less privileged communities, after their training and education, they cannot enter into the labor market because simply they don't have work experience.
Okay.
And corporations do not allow them to be hired. But we have a very good example of a 15 years partnership with a corporate, DHL, that took young people, trained them, accompanied them, and then released them after a year to be employed somewhere else or even within DHL. This is an incredible example of how to create social value and also propel economy. So my question is, can corporates actually open their door for young people who have no CVs? Okay. The other point really I want to flag is there is a lot of talk about advancement in technology, AI and other opportunities that come. We need to keep in mind there are massive young people out there who are left out. They don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the devices, they don't have the training. Even simply, they don't have access to internet in some places. How do you really bring them? If we want to propel the economy, this needs to go into the technology ecosystem. So what is the solution for this?
Okay, who's the question directed for?
Well, people who talk, about technology.
I think the corporate, maybe Jay, you could answer.
Sure. Well, I'll give you, one view, which is that the example you've given is has been replicated by a number of companies around the world. I just came from a week in Germany, and the Germans have an apprenticeship system that is known to be world best in class there. There is a thought that in this new world that governments will have to support these apprenticeships, these internships to facilitate them, because a lot of the active labor market programs that governments implement have not been as effective. And so what you really need to do is say, how do I incentivize the private sector to do this, but I don't create a program that ultimately isn't engineered to exactly what the private sector needs. So I mentioned Estonia earlier. It's a great example also of a voucher program for apprenticeships and internships where the government basically subsidizes that for a period. And then it's up to the employee to get that job or to find another job based on that period. So I think that there are a lot of these mechanisms that can be done. They have to be done really with a sense of partnership actually it's a troika. It's a troika of vocational schools and universities, the business community, and obviously the worker. And Toyota is a perfect example of that in Kentucky. Toyota did a program with a vocational school where they funded a training program for automobile workers in Kentucky, and they had a shortage of workers, so they pushed people through that program and then took them back out.
Dr. Badr,
Very quick. I do see the importance of having work experience, and sometimes before you get employed, you're discounted as an applicant because you don't have that. That's why at the MISC Foundation, we focus on multiple ways of getting this job experience, either through simulations, which can be mass used by numbers of youth, and we have worked with world-class corporations such as Microsoft, BCG, and so on, where you could be doing almost like on-job experiences, but by simulation. But we also match make between the youth who are seeking employment opportunities or even internships with those corporations that have opportunities but don't know where to find those. And if you want to hear more about these upskilling opportunities and empowering youth, I see you're all interested. We do have a booth at Via Riyadh at the Youth Majlis there that speaks specifically about this. I want to invite you all to attend there.
Your Excellency, you also have something to say.
One thing that's important is link and match. Link and match between university or school and the industry. So the student can do interns before they graduate. So they can work 1 semester or 2 semesters and got credit. So what we call a freedom education program. And on top of that, the companies who participate in the project will get fiscal incentive from the government. So whatever program that they give to the student, they will get 20% of tax deduction. So it's a win-win solutions. And the student who do interns will get salary, of course not commercials. So they can learn, they can get incentive for the students, the company got fiscal incentive. So I think this is the way that we are using to reduce the gap between the student and the job market.
So because we're almost done and we have to wrap up, I'll go back to you, Ayman, and ask you about what advice would you, as a youth of this century, because we're all here old, yeah? So, what advice would you give the youth in order to think about what jobs they're going to pursue and what challenges they have ahead of them?
I would tell the youth today to continue to be resilient, adaptive, agile. With the rise of all the technological advancements, there could be and will be displacements. But I would tell young people today, especially in Saudi, that we're living in the golden age of Saudi Arabia. Never was there a time that's better to start a company today. There's plenty of venture capital funding, angel investors, accelerator programs. There's so many new industries on the rise. And all you need to do is take that next step and really challenge yourself and believe in yourself and say, how can I change the world? Believe in it, and I believe we have all the support in the world on this panel. I can speak endlessly to the MISC Foundation, and also as a global shaper and a youth member of the World Economic Forum, I can say there's unparalleled support. So just go out there, and if you believe it, the world will be your oyster.
Jay, I think we have a couple of minutes.
I don't know that I'll draw that kind of applause, but I will try to say a couple things. One, if I were talking to youth now, I would say first, you have to be tech competent. That doesn't mean code, by the way, because AI is going to code for us. It means the ability to understand math, physics, science, and digital applications enough to be able to talk tech in a domain expertise. And that's the second thing, is you need a domain expertise, because for a very long time we're going to be matching the applications of technology to a particular subject matter expertise. And you have to own that. You have to pick one and own it and be tech savvy enough to be that interface. And third, a lot of what the AI, generative AI experts will tell you is that the human component is what the AI still can't do and won't do for a very long time, a medium long time. And so human skills are critical in that. That interface between the tech world and humanity requires a soft skill set. And one of the things that we don't think is if you're all hard skills, we'll miss out in the training that needs to happen in the soft skill space.
Thank you very much. Dear panelists, our time has run up. would like to thank all of you for a very interesting conversation. We did discuss the way to create jobs in the future, talking about reskilling, skilling, reskilling, digitization. I think this is something that all the youth need to think about moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.